Well, welcome everyone. We're starting quite a bit later today. It's crazy traffic out there, and we probably have a few of our members at the wrong location, but we ought to jump into it. So, welcome to the Advisory Committee of Peninsula Community Choice Energy. As always, why don't we just quickly do some introductions? We can start with Amanda.
Amanda Borsum, CMCDA.
Hi, Susie Ray, League of Women Voters.
You're up.
David Bowie, North Fair Oaks.
James Regoma, San Mateo Labor Council.
Landis Martela, IBW 1245.
Stacy Hopper, Village Society of San Mateo County.
Cameron Johnson, San Carlos City Council.
Charles Stone, Belmont City Council. Joe Goethel, San Mateo City Council.
Dave Hyman, the Board of Supervisors.
Carol Bloom with the Board of Supervisors.
Jeff Alves, Portola Valley.
Heather Abrams, Menlo Park. Sigal Michael, City of Burlingame.
Brad Donahue, Town of Colma.
Lorenzo Hines, Pacifica.
Jan Butts, Community Choice Energy.
Sue Chow, Sierra Club.
Elisa McAvoy, San Mateo County School Boards Association.
Diane Bailey, Menlo Spark.
All right. Our attendance improved considerably in the last 5 minutes. So to begin with, Supervisor Groom and I are excited to tell you, as if you're not already aware, that the Board of Supervisors approved the Joint Powers Agreement. So now we have approved on 2 readings the Community Choice Energy Ordinance and adopted the JPA. So we are complete. And so 1 jurisdiction down, 20 to go. And as you'll hear from Jim Egermeyer, there's been some great outreach and meetings at many councils, and so we're well on the path in that direction. So we'll begin with just a quick review of the minutes. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes for the meeting of October 22nd? Okay, seeing no revisions.
Move to approve. Second.
The motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Nicely done. We'll take an opportunity now to have public comment. So this is a time for folks who have joined us who have anything to share with the advisory board. Do we have any speakers this evening? Okay. Well, seeing none, then we can move to updates from Mr. Egermeyer.
Good evening, committee members and members of the public. Thank you for joining us tonight. And my comments will be brief, but we've been very active over the course of this last month. In fact, this first list kind of tells you a little bit about our activities around meeting with the community, as well as there have been a number of meetings with the city attorneys around the final JPA document that we presented to the Board of Supervisors. But this kind of gives you an idea of our involvement, including a number of members from staff and a member of the Board of Supervisors, either Supervisor Pine or Supervisor Groom in attendance at these, and then as well as David Silberman from County Counsel's Office. And a number of upcoming presentations here with our community workshop this weekend, Portola Valley, Menlo Park Rotary Club, and then also South San Francisco Rotary Club, soon to be. Presentations to city councils have been around either information sessions or, in fact, kind of the study session approach. Some have been fairly short and to the point, and then others that have been a little bit longer and a little bit more engagement. But want to say that we've been kind of making the rounds, and if you're not listed up there, we hope to be seeing you soon.
We also did a brief visit to East Palo Alto.
That's correct, right.
So like we've ended 9 of 20.
Right.
In
Yes.
some form.
Right. So with that, that's kind of the activity that we've been doing over the course of the last 30 days, and well, less, because we didn't go a full month before we had this meeting. This was over the last 3 weeks. So with that, that's all I have to share with tonight for our current activities. Thank you.
Now you're back on schedule.
How about that? So we want to talk about the 216 meeting schedule and topics. Seth, are you going to cover that one? And let me also just remind everyone that we will not be having the advisory committee meeting in December. So the next time we would get together is January.
Great. Well, thank you as always. It's a pleasure always to speak in front of this group. I am going to walk through, by the way, I'm one of the consultants working with the county and working with Lean Energy US. So I'm going to walk through the next several months here, and then I will, after that, talk about the implementation plan. So the current plan right now is to actually have the first electrons from Peninsula Clean Energy delivered in October of 2016. That's a bit of a change. We were looking at August, the last meeting, but as we dug down with our technical consultants and really started evaluating what was going to be required to happen between now and launch, we thought that a couple of extra months would be very important to make sure that the program gets off to the right start. So we want to launch certainly in 2016 for a few reasons, and we've picked October for some of the reasons that are listed here. For one, October takes into account the advantage that we have by launching during the summer season. So the summer rates are a little bit higher than the winter rates, as you probably know, and therefore the margins that a load-serving entity would have are a little bit better. This is really more relevant for the commercial sector than the residential sector, but we were advised by Pacific Energy Advisors that this would be a good time to launch any time in that summer, during that summer tariff schedule. It also avoids one issue that we're likely to see, which is that the PG&E rates change on January 1st. So that means that if you were to launch, let's say, in January or February, the previous notices for the previous several months you're not really exactly sure what you'd be comparing to. Whereas if you launch in October and there are several months of notices prior to that, the community would have a better sense as to what exactly the product, the Peninsula Clean Energy Power that would be priced at compared to PG&E. We definitely want to launch in 2016 also because the county budget for the startup cost and launching the program anticipate that, and if we waited until 2017, then obviously there would be that budget would be exceeded. However, if for some reason we need to wait until 2017, the idea would be wait until the spring, again, for the reasons I just mentioned, but that would be the fallback position. Again, we feel that based on all the work we've done to date, that October is certainly very doable. But it's aggressive, and the timeline is partly dependent on having 2 PCE board meetings a month for the period from when the PCE board of directors is actually seated. I'll get more into that in a minute. So I'm going to pretty much at the end of the year right now. So I'm going to starting with Q1 next year. We're looking between now and the end of February. Again, we're meeting with all the city councils. We're trying to get a sense as to which cities are ready to commit to launching the program looking to have that commitment by the end of February. So then in March, once we know which cities are going to be part of the first wave, the first board meeting would be held, a Peninsula Clean Energy board meeting would be seated. And the idea also is to develop and get approved the implementation plan within the first quarter of next year. Now, I'm actually doing the next presentation talking about the implementation plan, so I won't steal my own thunder, but suffice to say that's a very important document to get the program off and running. So the key tasks you can see there in the right-hand column, all the organizational work for the Joint Powers Authority, drafting the implementation plan, and very importantly, preparing the request for proposal, the actual request for bids that will go out to the energy service providers. The energy service provider, or the ESP, as we sometimes say for short, that is going to be, that's a critical function. That's going to be the company that actually goes out on behalf of PCE and procures the mix of energy that the board wants to see procured. And these ESPs are usually around for quite a period of time, but the amount of energy that they will provide for the CCE program diminishes over time as the community choice program starts developing its own resources or launching to its own bilateral contracts. But that's a pretty key function there. Moving on to the second quarter of next year, the idea is to actually have that implementation plan approved and submitted and certified by the Public Utility Commission. So a community choice program cannot launch until that implementation plan is certified by the PUC, and that takes about 90 days, we think. No, I should say no more than 90 days. The RFP for the energy services and the data manager will be issued then, according to this plan. The data management firm is the company that really does all the back office work, the data exchange with PG&E, which is going to be a pretty critical function, of course. And then during that time, the executive officer, the one who's going to run the program, would likely be hired. That search would happen during the second quarter. And then we would get into a fairly extensive marketing campaign, which Kirsten will get into shortly. And then we would begin the discussions with the banks. And then moving on to now the third quarter, we feel that, like the other two community choice programs that launched in the Bay Area, that there's going to be a gap where the county's funds are going to stop, but we won't actually have revenues yet from the ratepayers, and so therefore PCE would need some interim bank financing to cover costs, consulting costs, legal costs, as well as the initial phase of power procurement. You're going to be buying power before we're actually getting revenue for that power. So we expect a multi-million-dollar requirement, a capital requirement. We'll know exactly what that is once we know how many cities are on board. But the idea is that in the third quarter of next year, that terms with the banks or the selected bank would be finalized, and that would be agreed to. A number of banks have already expressed interest in providing this kind of financial support for community choice programs, so we don't anticipate many problems with that. The energy supply contract with the ESP would be finalized, and then, of course, we would know exactly what the power prices are, and therefore we could go through the process of setting the initial rates for Peninsula Clean Energy. The call center would be established. The bond, which is a requirement, I'll get more into that a little bit later, that would be posted. Additional staff would be hired as necessary. And then, very importantly, customer notifications, the opt-out notices, would begin in July. Then moving on to Q4, if we're assuming a October 1st launch date, the first phase, the phase one customers, would be switched over. You have a certain number of accounts per day, depending on the period of time. If we're looking at a phase one enrollment, about 30 days, then you'd have 1/31st of all the customers in phase one would be enrolled on a daily basis. And then the opt-out notices would continue for August, September, and post-launch, at least to post-launch. So that is, that's major milestones for 2016. Just going by month, I'll try and run through this as quickly as possible. Again, we're looking at, these are the advisory committee and then board of director meeting topics. So we're not going to meet in December. The next meeting would be in January for the advisory committee. And the idea there would be to get input and have some presentations on what the implementation plan content would be and get some input from the committee on that. The next meeting would be the reviewing the plans for and the content for the request for proposal that would go out to the energy service providers, as well as handling other JPA organizational matters. That would be the last official advisory committee meeting. We would then transition into, on March 1st, once we know the members of the JPA, the first meeting of the Peninsula Clean Energy Board of Directors. That would, topics there for those two meetings in March would be the approval of the bylaws, other administrative issues, whatever they may be, approval of the implementation plan, which may take a couple of meetings, and then approval of the request for proposal that would go out for the key vendors such as the ESP and the data management provider. Moving on to April. The topics for the PCE board meetings there would be the executive search, other staffing needs, various contracts that are being negotiated, updating where we are with the bank financing, going off now into May, looking to approve the financial terms with the bank that it's selected, and then if there's a credit guarantee issue, getting that resolved. Beginning the negotiations with the energy service provider, and then actually selecting that would be certainly a big source of discussions for this group, for the, I should say, for the board of directors. And then begin the basic process for rate design. And the way that's worked in other places, you've had a consultant or a couple of consultants coming in, and we've done this before, and for the other two programs, design the rate structure. Usually and typically it would be more or less mirroring PG&E's rates. And then moving on to the June meetings, approving the utility service agreement. That's the agreement between PG&E and Peninsula Clean Energy to provide all of the joint services that are going to be required, because PG&E is obviously still very much a partner. Beginning the initial credit drawdown, assuming that's necessary, and then approving the rate structure. And moving on into July, the expectation would be that the chief executive officer or the executive director would be hired. The call center would be established that would provide the customers with a 1-800 number to call if they wanted to ask any questions. And then the first customer notices would go out again sometime in the month of July. And then in August, the board would discuss the approval of the office setup and any other administrative matters. And then in September, posting the bond, third customer notice. These are all topics that maybe the board would want to discuss, as well as approval of various regulatory registrations, such as registering the program with Regis. That's the Western Regional Information Service that, for example, posts and registers and retires all Bucket 1 recs, for example, or any rec, I should say. So that's just a quick summary of the meetings. Now, of course, once we're getting sort of later in 2016, it's hard to speculate exactly what the meeting topics will be that late. But, however, I'm sure that we will have a very lavish launch party once service actually begins. That should be a lot of fun. But anyway, so these are some of the types of topics that I think the PCE Board of Directors will be dealing with and discussing throughout the course of the year. Obviously, things will come up, and we expect that after this time, after launch, then the board will only need to meet once per month. So that is just a quick overview of the road to 2016. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Question over here.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned banks.
Mm-hmm.
Are they local banks or are they large banks?
I think the idea could be either. The first two programs, there were local banks involved, and I think most of the discussions here have been the idea would be with a local bank.
And I think I'd like
Yes.
to encourage that.
Yes,
That's
yes.
great.
Other questions?
All right.
On to the implementation.
Implementation plan. All right, you're not done with me yet. All right, so just want to give you a quick overview of the implementation plan. So every community choice program has to have an implementation plan. You can see there, this is a requirement of California law. I won't read you the section of the law there, but basically the implementation plan details both the process and the consequences of aggregation, and I'll get more into that. But the implementation plan must be submitted along with the statement of intent, which I'll get into. It must be submitted to the PUC. As you saw, our target there was to do it in beginning of Q2 next year, to give them 90 days in order to certify it. And it's possible the PUC may come back and want things changed. We'll follow, I'm sure, pretty closely the template of Marin Clean Energy and Sonoma Clean Power, because those are, after all, approved. So it's a fairly, it's not a detailed business plan, but it's an important precedent-setting document that will guide the PC into the future. So here you can see here the topics that the implementation plan covers, and I'll get into a little more detail in the next slides in each of these areas, but certainly the structure, the funding, how it's operating, what its core functions are, that's obviously a key part of an implementation plan, the rate setting, and whatever other costs there are to customers that are in the program, and provisions to disclose the rate setting process and allocating the costs among participants through the rate process, and then what methods are there for entering and terminating agreements with the other entities, particularly and the energy service provider, which I talked about just before. So these are some of the elements that are required in the implementation plan. In addition, I should a couple more here, the rights and responsibilities of customers, including confidentiality, customer protection procedures, and then procedures for non-payment. Having reviewed the Sonoma implementation plan before I came here, I can tell you that all these items are fairly general and relatively brief. And I think that's the point of the implementation plan. Their implementation plan is about 45 pages. Given you can see here, you could probably spend 45 pages, just on one of those bullets. But the idea is to sort of set the general guidelines, and then the details can be figured out in subsequent documentation. So in addition here, the termination of the program. So let's say the community choice program ends and terminates, and the process for bringing customers back to PG&E service. And then a description of the third parties that would be supplying electricity to the program, including information on those companies. And I can tell you a little bit what the Sonoma implementation plan had on that topic. The statement of intent, these are sort of just the four basic overriding principles that every community choice program has to abide by and explicitly state in the implementation plan, which is there. You can see there universal access, which means that all residential customers would be able to participate and have access to the services of the community choice program. The CCE program would have to sort of state that part of its goals is certainly ensuring customer reliability of service, and that all classes of customers would be treated equitably in the rate base, and that it would have to follow the CCE program would have to follow any current and subsequent regulations or laws that are established by the PUC or the state legislature. So it basically would just put that information in there and say that you're going to do that, and that's sort of satisfies that part of the requirement for the implementation plan. So I put up here the couple of pages from the Sonoma implementation plan because I thought this would be helpful. I like this slide because the implementation plan, the idea is that it hews very closely to the requirements in the law that establishes community choice programs, specifically AB 117. So you've got there that statement of intent, and then of course on the right-hand side you've got which chapter in the implementation plan addresses these specific issues of these specific requirements of AB 117. You can see there patient rights, participant rights and responsibilities, termination, organizational structure, process and consequences of aggregation, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this slide because I think it's useful. So the Sonoma implementation plan, and if I just run down those quick topics here, you're looking at here starting first the process and again the consequences of aggregation. So the process is very straightforward. Customers are automatically enrolled. Opt-out notices are sent out. We're talking about where the county is proposing to do 5 opt-out notices. The JPA board will have to, of course, consider that. The minimum is 4. And so there's the process, but then there's the consequences. So one of the consequences of aggregation is that, well, Sonoma is looking to increase the amount of renewable energy that is in the supply mix than more than would otherwise be there. The greater number of energy efficiency programs would be established. Again, not huge narrative about what those programs would be, but just that would be one of the goals and therefore the consequences of aggregation. In terms of the organizational structure, again, setting up the Joint Powers Authority, having your board of directors that are, each member of the JPA gets a seat at the board. Number of staff people, the Sonoma implementation plan envisioned about 8 full-time equivalents. Just by contrast, Marin Clean Energy has about 30, so there's not one right answer there. And it really outlines the key functions of what a community choice program does. So obviously, as any load-serving entity would, its primary function is to supply electricity, develop local energy programs, conduct resource planning, so figuring out what the requirements are going to be now and into the future and what mix of those, how much of that resources would be supplied by different mixes, including energy efficiency, setting rates, providing customer service, and all that. Those are sort of outlined in the implementation plan, the key functions of what the program is going to do. Then talking about the cost of the startup activities and what those activities are, the staff and contracted services before the program launch and after, the capital requirements to launch the program, and then the plan to meet those capital requirements specifically through bank financing. Now, I don't know if this is required by the implementation plan by law, but the Sonoma plan did actually include the pro forma cash flow analysis that their technical study had done, and we could do the same thing here because we do have a pro forma analysis done by PEA. Very important also is phasing. So, and this is one of the decisions that the board is going to have to decide on, is how many, who's going to be enrolled in phase 1, how many phases are there going to be? Is it 2, 3 phases? And what's the timing? And how many customers in each phase, and what load does that represent? So how many megawatt hours are going to be in phase 1, phase 2, et cetera? That should be specified in the implementation plan, as well as supply requirements, so very closely related to that. So again, from each phase, what is the peak demand requirements going to be, including, very importantly, resource adequacy. There has to be a 15% cushion, so so electricity can be supplied even on the hottest days. And so the plan has to specify or to at least mention what the strategy is going to be for procuring both resource adequacy, peak demand, and electricity supply, as well as it can be mentioned meeting energy efficiency targets and certainly complying with PUC regulations like the Renewable Portfolio Standard. Rate setting objectives, the implementation plans I've seen are fairly general on this topic, so certainly we want to ensure revenue sufficiency, rate stability, competitiveness, as well as outlining in a general form what special programs there might be, such as net energy metering, feed-in tariff, that kind of thing. Again, customer rights, the implementation plan can, for example, specify what the cost would be for a customer to leave the program. So in case of Sonoma, it's $5 for residents or $25 for businesses. This is after the initial opt-out period, which is during that period is free to opt out. Procurement, so what is the process for going out and finding the energy service provider, the data manager, and other vendors? And then, of course, the contingency plan for termination of the program and using the bond that the CCA programs have to post that would help support the cost to return customers to PG&E service should the CCE program terminate. Sorry?
Can I cut in?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kirsten Pringle. I work with the county's Office of Sustainability, if you don't know me. And I'm in the corner because I'm taking notes, so sorry. Gordon even gave me my own microphone because he says he knows I like to speak during meetings, so thank you, Gordon. So I just wanted to make this really clear why we're talking about implementation plan tonight and why we're showing you this slide and why we went so much time over these points. So the things on the right are decision points. So most of the implementation plan is a boilerplate document. It's a lot of legal language we have to put in there. But the things on the right are things that we're going to make decisions on. And so the idea, going back to Seth's previous presentation about the timeline, is that we're telling you guys this now so you have over a month to think about these decisions and what you want to choose. Because we're going to come back in January and we're going to talk about this again, and we're going to make these decisions as a group. And then we're going to talk about it again in February. And the idea is in February, we have this implementation plan that's completely complete, that has all these decisions already made. And then in March, the board will vote on whether or not to approve this document. So we want to get as much feedback from you guys as possible and have a document ready to go in March for the first, or I guess technically the second, Board of Directors meeting of Peninsula Clean Energy. So I really want you guys to look back at the slide during your vacation time and your holidays and at least just think about some of these decision points, because we're going to be coming back to this in January.
Kirsten, would it be fair to say that maybe we would, the consultants and the county staff would lay out some potential options just to, get some thinking going? Or are we, on phasing and what other CCA programs have done? I mean, what is?
Yeah, so in January, we'll probably come back with not only examples from other CCEs, but our own recommendations, similar to the way we did it in the JPA agreement. But all these decision points are definitely up to discussion for the group.
Okay. Great, thanks. So I've talked about what the implementation plan, what's in it. Here are some elements about in terms of timing. So once the implementation plan has been filed with the PUC, it notifies PG&E within 10 days. Within 90 days of the submittal of the plan, the PUC says it must certify it has received the plan and either come back to us with comments or certify it. I think the history to date has been that usually takes less time than that, but that's we've built in 90 days just to because that's the maximum amount. We want to make sure that we're conservative there. It will also the PUC. This is just sort of standard boilerplate language. Will notify the CCE program of basically that there's a cost recovery mechanism. This BCIA, this departing load charge, and then the PUC would also indicate the earliest possible date at which the CCA program could launch. So I think Kirsten touched on this, but here are some of the key decisions that Peninsula Clean Energy will need to make, the JPA board will need to make in order to get the implementation plan drafted and submitted. Number one, of course, is how many cities are in the first wave, and what is the load, the corresponding load. What is the plan for our customer enrollment? Sonoma Clean Power, for example, they focused on their commercial accounts first, getting those in, representing a relatively small number of customers, but a relatively large proportion of the load. MCE did it, I think, just with a subset of residential customers. So there are different strategies, pros and cons of each approach, but that's one of the key decisions that have to be made. And then the sort of the general strategy with rate setting and pricing. So would the community choice program essentially match PG&E's basic rate structure, maybe making it some tariffs a little higher, a little lower, but basically following the same general structure. Again, the other CCE programs have done that because they didn't want any customers to be shocked one way or the other in terms of they wanted to have some continuity there. So this is some of the key decisions that the board will have to make before it completes the implementation plan. And a couple more here. What kind of other service offerings would there be? Like 100% renewable energy option. I suspect that will be part of the program, as well as net energy metering, feed-in tariffs, energy efficiency, and other programs as applicable. And a description, of course, of the overall organizational structure. Just a couple of other considerations here. Again, as I mentioned before, the implementation plan is not a detailed business plan. It's not supposed to cover everything, exactly how you're going to do your program design. It's not going to say that the feed-in tariff is going to be $136 per megawatt hour. But it's just sort of outlines for the PUC the overall direction that the programs are likely to go in. And I think I've covered this too. There are other templates out there that we know have been certified, so we could probably borrow a lot from the Marin and Sonoma implementation plans, and that might help expedite some of the document review and certification work that the PUC will do. And that's it.
Thank you, Seth.
Sure.
Okay, I'm sure we definitely need to ask you some questions. I'm hoping we have some questions.
Either way is fine with me.
Question? Is that what
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, there's a few slides back, equitable treatment of all classes of customers. So that, and I really just think there's kind of like two classes. There's residential and commercial. Is there another class of customer that?
I mean, within that, those are two broad classes, but I guess there's industrial, small commercial, commercial, agricultural, yeah.
And then secondly, tied to that, I guess what I was, and I think you might have just answered it there. You're going to probably generally follow kind of the larger the PG&E utility model. So you offer the same options to large industrial if they agree to be interrupted, or to shed load on problem days, if they would get some consideration in terms of their rate.
Sure. I mean, I think that if you have some interruptible load or demand response programs, that they would get compensated for that, and the amount of compensation or the exact structure of that would be determined by the JPA board.
Jeff has a question.
Yeah. So you touched a little bit on this, but going forward, and I'm getting questions about this specifically. Distributed resources, rooftop solar, obviously, but also storage, which probably will become something we think about a lot in the next 5 years. How far do we have to set out stakes on that in the implementation plan? As far as I know, we can't yet come up with a specific plan for how we would handle distributed storage, but do we need to start saying we're going to try to adapt to distributed storage and include it in our rate setting plans as we go forward? Do we need to set stakes on that, or?
I think you certainly can, and I think if you did, I wouldn't say much more beyond that. I mean, for example, the Sonoma implementation plan just said, we will develop energy efficiency programs that are above and beyond what PG&E offers.
Above and beyond.
Period.
But if we do want to go beyond PG&E, we should probably kind of state that that's something where we should probably push forward with that, even at this early stage.
I will say, and this is a question I actually asked for PEA, I will note that although energy efficiency is discussed in the Sonoma implementation plan, I don't believe they've actually really done their own, and they have not, as of yet, undertaken their own energy efficiency programs. They've generally referred their customers to PACE or other programs within their county.
I think Marin has taken.
They've taken a different approach. They've applied to actually administer the programs through the benefits charge.
And then for things that we might finance through PCE, the same thing, just state an intention to finance our own project.
Yeah. And Sonoma Clean Power mentions that also, but they have not as of yet done it.
Right.
And they haven't been dinged at all from the PUC.
Let's have to ask the question a different way. So you come up with a new idea, you hadn't mentioned it in the implementation plan. I assume there's some flexibility to pursue other ideas?
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think you have to list every conceivable idea in the implementation plan, or if you come up with another idea that's not in the original implementation plan, you have to, you can't do it. And actually, Marin Clean Energy, they've updated their implementation plan, which they have to do because they've been taking on more members. But they've implemented storage. I don't think storage is at all mentioned in their original one.
Did Diane have to?
Thank you. I want to compliment you on this accelerated time frame and really great preparation ahead of time before the JPA is formed. And Kirsten had mentioned the possibility to assemble some background material before our next meeting so that we can look at how Sonoma, how Marin, how other jurisdictions have handled some of these questions. And I just wanted to promote that idea. It would be extremely helpful, and in particular on net energy metering. If you can, I think that's an issue of great interest among this group, and if you can assemble some background material, not a fancy white paper, just maybe a table full of bullet points, but it would be helpful if you can include Palo Alto in addition to the other CCEs on that It'll really help speed the preparation before the JPA is formed. Thanks.
Thank you.
And another question here for you, Seth. You mentioned that we have to describe the third parties that will supply the electricity.
Yes.
So am I correct in thinking that when we first get going, we're going to have this contract with this ESP, and that entity will source the energy, and we won't have, individual contracts with generators. So in the beginning, is that pretty much all we have? Is a single contract with the ESP?
Pretty much, yeah. I think that's how it's worked in the other communities as well. But that changes pretty quickly. I mean, once, Marine Clean Energy fairly early on went out and issued an RFP for directly contracting as being an off-taker from renewable energy generators on a power purchase agreement arrangement. And once they had revenue, they could do that. They were seen as a viable off-taker. And in the Sonoma plan, they actually, when that plan got certified, they hadn't selected the ESP, but they had shortlisted them. And they actually described the experience and the financial capacities of the ones that they were selecting to make sure to sort of convey the message that that whatever decision they made would be in compliance with all the other requirements of the PUC. So there was direct energy, Constellation, NRG. So there was a good description of the viable options, even though they hadn't selected it yet.
Right, and the PUC doesn't look below that. They don't look at where the ESP is getting the energy. They just want to know what ESP you're working with.
Yeah, I mean, all the ESPs that would be bidding are already supplying in the California market, either to other community choice programs or as direct access providers. So certainly as a requirement in the RFP, you would put certified to operate in the state of California, have X number of years of experience, whatever the requirements might be, so that the PUC will know that all the options that the PCE would be considering for the energy service provider would meet all requirements of the state.
Okay. Other question? Oh, Jeff?
Just one more question. Would we have any direct dealings with the ISO, or would that be solely through the ESP or someone else?
Yeah. So the one of the functions of the ESP, certainly initially, would be schedule coordination and doing all the settlement work with the ISO. Over time, as the CCE gets more experience, that could change. But certainly, from day one, the PCE wouldn't want to be involved in, scheduling every, yeah.
Do you have a question, Heather?
Yes. You mentioned that Marin needed to update their implementation plan as they were taking on new communities. What other conditions might prompt a revision of an implementation plan?
So far, that's the only one I know of. And Marin's been pretty aggressive about its expansion plan, so they have to keep taking on new load and having additional responsibilities. So beyond that, I couldn't tell you for certain.
Is it a requirement in the implementation plan or for the ESP for all the procured power to be within California?
No. I mean, I think that the requirements that you want for the ESP would be specified in the RFP, in the request for proposal. So if you, for example, wanted all of in-state power, you could, I suppose, put that into the RFP. But I think it's generally what's in the RFP is a certain amount of mix of renewable energy versus non-renewable energy. Obviously, I've been some discussions about REC policy in that regard, but it doesn't require that all power be procured within the state. And both Marin and Sonoma do procure power from out of state, the Northwest mostly.
Okay. Any further questions for Seth? Other questions from the audience? I think you could stand up and...
Just a couple of comments on the distributed energy resources that came up.
Could you just introduce yourself, too?
Sorry, Ted Howard from consultant. On storage, CPC will require by 2020 that all CCAs have served 1% of peak load with storage. So that's one requirement coming up that you should be aware of. And I don't think it's a big challenge, but in any event, it all depends on the economics and so on. In demand response, there's some auctions going on right now that CPUC has authorized, and I think Marin Clean Energy is probably looking into that. They're just starting up with some pilot auctions for demand response, and that might be something, a good way to get an entree into demand response as a distributed energy resource. And then energy efficiency, currently the data can't be broken out. They're changing over to smart meters. Once smart meters are available, they will require CCAs to break out their energy efficiency data separately from PG&E and other utilities. Currently, it's just included under PG&E, the energy efficiency, because they can't break out the data. They don't have the smart meter data, but as that becomes available, then the CCA will be required to do that on their own and to break out the data and so on. So those are just three developments in distributed energy resources.
Thank you.
Thank you, very helpful. Yes.
Okay, great. This might be more of a question for Kirsten, actually. I'm glad you mentioned that we'll be weighing in January. How do you see that process happening?
In this format, in the advisory committee. So we'll go back to all the decision points, and like I said, we'll give our recommendation, and we'll show what Sonoma and Marin has done, and possibly then Palo Alto as well, and then we'll have a discussion about it, and then we'll capture the discussion, and then put the draft document out, and if you guys have more comments, then we'll incorporate that into some type of, not a final version, because it's not final until the JPA board approves it, but into some type of draft that incorporates everybody's comments. And I actually see this as a really positive thing, because even though the JPA board is all at this time elected officials and members from the city, this gives our members of the community a lot of input into this important document. Does that answer your question? Yes, thank you.
Okay, I think that will do it. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Kirsten, now you get the mic and the podium. Yes.
Okay, hi everyone. Once again, my name is Kirsten Pringle. I work for the county's Office of Sustainability. And to finish off tonight, we want to talk about all the outreach and communications that we will be doing in 2016. So we've been doing a lot of really robust outreach. We try to report out to you guys at the beginning of every advisory committee about what we're doing, and all of that's going to continue. But as the program actually launches, we really need to amp up our efforts. And to help with that, we're going to be hiring an outreach consultant paid for at this time by the county to help with all these marketing efforts. So continue the efforts that we've already been doing, but also to expand them. And so right now we're writing the request for proposals to find this outreach consultant. And the purpose of tonight is to show you this outreach and communications plan that we're drafting that will also serve as a scope of work for this outreach consultant. And I want to get your guys' feedback on any places we might be missing opportunities to do outreach, or just general ideas about this plan so we can incorporate it into the scope of work. So we've kind of broken it down into two different types of strategies. So one of them is community-wide outreach strategies, and one of them is targeted. And in our experience, we've actually found that the targeted outreach is the most effective, but it's really hard to get to all these different groups of people, especially residents who maybe aren't part of some social group or a specific organization that we can present to. So we really need to expand our community-wide outreach strategies. So one of them we're going to do is mail notices, which I'll talk more about. We're also going to continue with the collateral we have. So our collateral is all the paper documents, the things we have out front, like the community guide and the trifold brochure. We're going to have enhanced customer service. We're going to continue the Peninsula Clean Energy website and expand it, and also continue to use our social media platforms. Right now we have a Peninsula Clean Energy Twitter, as well as a Facebook group, which has blown up lately, so that's really fun. Those have been really great venues to just have dialogue with residents who are interested but maybe can't make it to these meetings. We'll do more email marketing with our mailing list that has over 500 people on it right now. We're going to do a full advertising campaign, and then we'll do in-person presentations, workshops, and tabling. So a little about the mail notice. So the mail notice is actually the only required part of advertising through this program. The California Public Utilities Commission requires us to do a minimum of 4 mailed notices to every electricity customer in Peninsula Clean Energy's service territory. We will do 5, probably, because that's what Marin and Sonoma have done, and we think it actually works really well with the timeline and to ensure people have ample notices. So the requirement is that you have to give 2 mail notices 60 days before enrollment and 2 notices 60 days after enrollment. And I'll show a timeline at the end that will make it a little clearer how that's going to work. So we imagine we actually do 3 notices 60 days before enrollment, or more like 90 days before enrollment. So all the customers will have 90 days to enroll in the program or to opt out of it. And then, so this information included in it will be the power choices, rates, and programs offered. But most importantly, you'll have the terms and conditions for service and opt-out instructions. And the opt-out instructions are what really key about this, because I want to remind you all this is an opt-out program. So customers who do not want to be in this need to know how they can opt out. And all these notices will be sent bilingual in Spanish and English, and we'll also have other notices available for customers who need them, probably in Tagalog and Chinese. So currently we have a number of collateral that we've developed. This includes trifold brochure, community guide to the tech study, an FAQ and glossary of terms. But we'll really have to expand this as the program moves forward, especially with specialized brochures for residential and commercial customers, guide on reading energy bills, specific materials for net energy metering, and an FAQ, which we're developing right now. And we're also in the process of translating these all into English, Spanish, Chinese, and Tagalog. We actually got these today, our new translations, so we actually should have them in print by mid-December. So if you guys are interested in the translated materials, we're happy to provide them to you. So customer service. The call center is a really important part of serving all these customers, especially in the interim period. The county staff will still be serving as the staff for Peninsula Clean Energy. And so as you imagine, we're going to have a bunch of calls about this program as people begin to receive more information about it and get their mail notices. So the call center will be established in summer of 2016. And during the enrollment period, we'll have 24/7 service for anybody who calls and has questions about the program, about how to opt out, what all the program options are. And Peninsula Clean Energy and county staff will be writing the scripts for them. So we'll have a lot of input, and all the members of the call center will be really well educated about what the program is and what all the customers' options are. And we also now have a general email address called info@peninsulacleanenergy.com, so people can stop emailing me all the time. And that will eventually go over to Peninsula Clean Energy staff. And this is kind of the heart of all of this. This is the advertising campaign. So this kind of goes, all the things I mentioned before are mostly things we already do other than the call center. But this is where the consultant we're going to hire is really going to help. So these are just ideas that I thought of with help from the Marin Clean Energy Outreach Coordinator. But this is one of the things I really need help with is what are the best ways to advertise countywide or to all the residents in our county. So some ideas we had were print advertisements in local newspapers, especially in the Sunday newspapers, targeted web-based advertising, radio, signage with bus stops, billboards, etc., banners, and advertising and social media platforms. And then, of course, in-person tabling. We've actually found tabling is very ineffective, but it's really good to at least be visible in the community. So we definitely expect to be at community events, farmers market, Earth Day events, neighborhood events. And we do like talking to people. I like talking to people, so that's always fun. And we'll continue our community workshops. We've been doing the last couple of months, I think at least one community workshop a month. And I think that's a pretty good pace. And we try to move them throughout the county and have them at different times of day. And so I think we'll continue that all through 2016. So those were community-wide, like kind of general outreach. But we also have some specific targeted outreach we want to do, especially to certain audiences. So this includes individuals for whom English is a second language, seniors, and commercial and industrial customers. So in person is presentations to specific organizations, and we've actually found that this is the most effective way to get people to listen to us because we have a captive audience, and they are stuck there whether they like it or not listening to us for an hour. But it's actually been really great because we've talked to all sorts of people. We've talked to business organizations, faith-based organizations, environmental organizations, and everyone has been pretty interested in one way or another. And so we really want to expand to new audiences that we haven't reached before. So this may include organizations that serve low-income or fixed-income individuals and minority populations, on top of continuing to service the organizations that we already do. And I also would like to expand our outreach to homeowner associations because I think this is another really great group of individuals that really engage in their community and that can help us spread this information. English as a second language speakers, this is really important to me, but also I think for everyone here because it really talks to the equity issue of this. We want to make sure that individuals throughout their county, no matter what language they speak or what income level they're at, have equal access to this program and equal knowledge about this program. So that's why we are translating all the collateral in multiple languages. The call center will also have translation options available. We're going to definitely have at least the Spanish version of our website, if not multiple versions. I want to host some community workshops next year that have translation options. And we want to partner with community organizations who serve English as a second language speakers. One of our target audiences is seniors, because we know a lot of seniors are on fixed income. And so it's a really big worry about them, about rates. And a lot of seniors also have special discounts right now to help them with their electricity bill. And so we want to let all the seniors know and everybody know that these type of programs are unaffected by PCE service. So seniors will continue to get this. And so the way we're going to target seniors is make presentations at retirement homes and senior centers, do community workshop target at seniors, probably multiple workshops, and partner with community organizations such as the County Aging Adult Services, Commission on Aging, and there's tons of nonprofits throughout our county, but I really need help identifying some of them that I'd really love to partner with. And then finally, commercial and industrial customers. So commercial and industrial customers are the most sensitive to price because they have a profit to make, which is totally understandable. And that's why we've done a lot of outreach to commercial industrial customers already. We've worked with SAMCETA. We held a business forum at the beginning of this year. We've done presentations to most of the chambers of commerce throughout the county. But I think we need to go back to all these organizations once we have the rates and programs set and do it all again, basically. But also maybe do some outreach to small businesses, continue the partnership with all these business organizations, and also continue to hold one-on-one meetings with some of the largest businesses or companies in our service territory. It's private information which businesses use the most energy, but we do have some very large, maybe obvious suspects in our county, and we really want to work with them. And the good news is a lot of these businesses have their own sustainability goals. So they're also interested in having more renewable energy, so I think this is a partnership that would really help both parties. So this is a general overview of the outreach timeline. So we hope to have the consultant hired in January. And then we'll continue throughout the year holding study sessions and presentations to councils. So don't feel like after the end of February, that we'll stop presentations to councils if you want it, but you do have to reach out to us. Presentations to community organizations and community workshops. In February, we're going to begin a lot of press outreach. and begin expanded outreach to new community organizations. In March is when our advertising, like our big advertising campaign will begin. So that's when you start seeing the newspaper ads, the television ads, the radio ads. We'll also expand our website with our electricity options and rates. And once we have all the big program decisions made, we'll also have to redesign all our collateral that we have here. In April, we hope the board of directors approves our final marketing campaign. We'll expand our website to prepare for customer enrollment. We'll be translating our website into other languages. And I hope that in April, we'll also hold our workshop for seniors. In May, we'll prepare our call center scripts. In June will be the commencement of the full advertising campaign, and June is also when the call center goes live. So as early as June, customers can start calling the call center. And then from July to December, it's really focused on the mail notices because those are the most important part. And we also want to make sure we get it right because it is required by the CPUC. So the first mail notice will go out in July. They'll be sent out in waves, so not all customers will receive their mail notice at the same time. Part of it is because of the phase-in process, but part of it is because customers receive their mail notices based on when their meters are read or meters are set. So there's actually a very specific timeline that you have to follow. So mail notices will start in July and continue all the way through December. There's a little break in mail notices in October, and that's because that's when our actual service begins. And so this final piece is kind of an ask for all of you, especially our members of the city, but also members of our service organizations and our audience, is that even though PCE will have its own outreach staff and the county has been working really hard on it, we definitely need your help, not just now, but throughout the whole lifetime of Peninsula Clean Energy. So these are some things that you can do to help with outreach. We're really asking you to help us host community workshops. The workshops we've had and we've partnered with the cities on have been really great, and it's very helpful to have a city support to be able to advertise the workshops or even have other speakers there so people just don't have to listen to me talk all the time. Distribute the Peninsula Clean Energy collateral. We have boxes and boxes of it in our office. Please take it. Please post information on your website, your social media platforms, your newsletters. The more place we can get this information, the better. Work with your local media outlets, write opt-eds, and just inform staff, us, and hopefully in the future somebody else, of outreach opportunities that we maybe aren't taking advantage of already. Oh, that's the summary of this presentation. That goes on to the next. So I really appreciate your guys' time, and if you guys have any questions, but especially feedback, I would love that. And if you can't think of anything now, you can always email me. Yes. Gordon, take good notes.
My question is regarding the call center. Where's
Yes.
the call center going to be located?
That is a good question. I do not know because we have not decided yet.
Are we looking at doing something local in our county?
That decision hasn't been made. That would be made by the board, but that's a really good point.
I'll just say that we should encourage it be
Yes.
local business.
Yes, definitely. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
I had just a couple of observations, I guess.
Yes.
And just for the benefit, one thing we've picked up in going to the various councils is we always get a lot of questions about the net energy metering.
Yes.
So I think Diane made this point too. So we really want to put together a good FAQ on that because, people who, we have a lot of people with rooftop solar. Another good way to get news out, I think, I just asked the council members on this is, every city has these e-newsletters. If you can be popping stuff into that, those things have a big subscription. And I know you're already doing this, Kirsten, but obviously whatever we can learn from Marin and Sonoma. And maybe Seth, when these programs turned on in those counties were people like, oh, what happened here? Or did they kind of have a good feeling that it was, I guess they got the notices by definition.
Yeah, and I wasn't around so much for the Marin part of it, but in Sonoma, there was a lot of polling done. So polling, newspaper, and other print media.
pick up some lessons from them, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely.
We have a couple of people, we'll just do the advisory members first, then we'll get to the audience. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
just real quick, excellent plan. It's really thorough and
Thank you.
really fun to see it rolling out. I just wanted to mention school districts
Yes.
that's another opportunity. We all have e-newsletters and principal newsletters and that sort of thing. And then I'm also just thinking there's an opportunity certainly at school sites as there is at city and county sites potentially for some of the solar energy or other sorts of things. So that's sort of a separate thing a little bit, but a lot of school districts do have sustainability plans, so there may be an opportunity to kind of help inform our parents about that in addition to helping you get the word out on this particular program.
Yeah, that's a very good idea.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Lisa? Stacy?
I wanted to put in a plug for another FAQ besides the net energy metering.
Go for it.
I think I can safely say that none of our clients at Legal Aid have rooftop solar. Our constituents are the seniors and the lower income folks who are going. Their main worry is going to be, are my electric bill is going to go up? I need an oxygen tank. I've got the medical baseline, or just I really can't afford another $10 a month. So please tell me it's not going to go up. So if you're going to do some. That would be kind of the other range besides the net energy metering. That's going to be the high level of questions just around affordability. Is it going to change?
Okay, thank you.
And Stacy, do you have any ideas at this point about how we could reach some of those folks effectively with that kind of information?
We have close relationships with a lot of the community agencies, and I think if we, once you have the collateral in different languages, I think that'll be pretty easy to get it out there. We do a lot of outreach. A lot of our partners do, a ton of outreach, and core service agencies are going to want to have that information available. So I think once it's in Spanish, I think it will be very easy to get out.
Great.
I have a minor comment. Your new website, the Peninsula Clean Energy, looks great.
Thank
I've already referred to the FAQ on there several times, but the only place I found it was under the advisory board website, and I found that to be sort of hard to, if people don't know, to look under binder materials for the advisory board where to find all the FAQs, unless it's somewhere else, and I didn't figure it out.
It's under resources, under
Okay.
outreach plan, but we could definitely make it more front and central. That's a good point. Thanks.
Any other advisory committee questions? I know we had a few people. Oh, go ahead, please.
I was just going to also recommend along the lines of the legal aid was that we're partnering with Samaritan House and Second Harvest, and maybe, like the hospital, county hospital, and if other service organizations like that would be really good for outreach, I think. And even if it's just having materials there. And also materials, are they being left at the libraries now? Because every library has a board of all the materials that are available. And that would be a really great one to, at least have the fold-out guy out for now.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Just two other suggestions. Peninsula Volunteers does the Meals on Wheels throughout San Mateo County. Would be another great way to get into somebody's house with something. And then the housing associations, HIP and HART are the two that come to mind of affordable housing, just to reach a lot of people who are ratepayers.
Perfect. Yes.
The YMCA's also try to do a lot of outreach to the communities that they're in, so that would be another good place to leave materials and maybe schedule workshops.
Okay, I think there were a few folks in the audience that had a question in the way back.
Yeah, I saw there you had reduction planning. I used to work at Marine Energy. I'm a Mateo County resident. I hear what's going on. You put May 2016 for rate design, I heard from Jen, but March 2016 is the date you advertise rates on the website. I want to make you aware of that.
Thank you. There is a little bit of disconnect there.
Is there another hand in the back?
Hi, Ann Schneider, Millbrae City Councilwoman-elect. I'm on the board of Millbrae Community Television, and we do both static displays and videos. So for your outreach, you might want to think of us and those other guys, those MTV guys. But both video and static display are ways to get the word out. And And I think last year for all the CERT members in the county, it was this program in the folders that we hang on doors. But if not, Silver Dragon is May or June. But for all of you who don't know, CERT members, we do a Silver Dragon emergency drill, and all the CERT members in all the town put door hangers up. And usually there's public information inside the reusable bags on there. So it's another way of reaching homeowners.
Perfect.
Or residents, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Mark Cohen. I'm with joint venture Silicon Valley. We're supporting the Santa Clara or Silicon Valley community choice. And one of the things we've learned is about 62% of the energy used in Santa Clara County are businesses and commercial. I believe San Mateo is about the same. So business outreach is going to be very key, I believe, to making sure your biggest energy users stay in and don't opt out. So we're doing a lot of business workshops as part of the Silicon Valley project.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the good thing there is there's less people to talk to.
Yeah.
But they have a lot of,
Of that 62%,
yeah.
about a dozen companies that
Right.
represent half of that 60%. So those dozen companies are very, very important.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. See, I knew you would have good ideas.
Hey, good presentation.
So I'll probably post the draft outreach plan in maybe before Thanksgiving. So if you guys want to look at it and give any final comments, and I'll probably be finalizing the RFP hopefully mid-December. So try to give me any comments before there if you guys have additional things you would like to see. And it's by no means like stuck on what we put in the plan. It's just guidelines for a consultant. So I want to finish up the evening by just showing you guys some next steps. I always want to highlight the upcoming city council schedules. So we have Woodside and December 8th study session. Portola Valley, December 9th is also a study session. Hillsborough is on December 14th. It's an informational session. Burlingame is January 4th. It's a study session. Pacifica is January 11th, informational session. San Carlos is January 11th. They're going to have their first reading of their ordinance. Millbrae is January 12th, informational. And South San Francisco, is on January 13th, study session. And this is just an overview where all the different cities in the county are right now. So we've asked for either study sessions or informational sessions as usually the first steps, just so the city councils get up to date on where they are. And so that's what everyone schedules. And we're happy to say that almost all the cities have committed or have already had a study or informational session. And just a few missing ones have tentatively said it. They just haven't set a date yet. So we're on a really good trajectory to get done on time by the end of February. And then as you can see, a couple of the other towns and cities have already scheduled their readings of the ordinance. Yes, Landis.
It looks like for Atherton, the first reading was, the second reading was before the first reading?
Oh, the year is off. Yeah, sorry. Typo. Good catch. Good catch. So yeah, feel free to, Gordon's been doing most of the scheduling for the presentations. So if you have a presentation you would like to do, you can email Gordon, but obviously anyone in the county can organize these. And that's it for tonight. So please visit our Peninsula Clean Energy website. And I'll
Atherton, Burlingame, and Millbrae are in the pole position there for the top three?
Yes or no? Some of these dates we haven't 100% confirmed, but those are the tentative dates we were given.
There will be special prize. The first, second.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about some additional next steps for our next meeting, and I guess that'll be in January. And I saw in the minutes that you mentioned my request to look at how this clean energy plan affects the county's efforts and its climate goals. And I think I've made that request a couple times in a row, and it'd be very helpful information to bring to the next advisory committee meeting. We, Menlo Spark, have been talking to a lot of you on this advisory committee about crafting a couple of different options through PCE to meet the needs of different cities within the county, and looking at potentially providing 2 base offerings, one with maybe more of an emphasis on rate savings and not as ambitious on renewables, and a second offering that is high renewable, approaching 100%, or offering 100% renewable power, and offering members the option to either opt down or opt up, depending on what the base offering is that the city decides on. And we have not been able to find a CCE in existence that has done this before, but our understanding is that it's legally feasible to have 2 different base offerings for cities to decide on. And I think it'd be very helpful and sort of speed the process along for the JPA to have this information a little bit more thought out and well-formed ahead of time. And it'd be helpful to have this advisory committee be able to discuss that approach ahead of time. Perhaps it's unworkable, I don't know, but we've been asking that it at least get some consideration and have the consultants at least explore it and prepare that option for us to discuss.
Going back to the schedule of the advisory committee meetings, I mean, we it's important that we talk about, the advisory committee's views on what the product offerings are. Because as we all know, the technical study, those were just, those were examples. They're not necessarily what, well, again, presumably we would do a 100% clean option, but what that middle option is it could move, depending on various priorities. And I think it's our thought to get into that, and that would cover your issues as well. We talked about that a little bit at the January meeting, Jim. Because one thing that we'll need our help from our consultants is, how much variability is there in that kind of middle option, right? I mean, the middle option today is, a lot of green energy, with very modest savings. So just how much do those variables change? If you cut the savings down even less, as we've talked about. I think we need to. I think the plan is to bring that kind of information to this committee to see how those look.
Thank you.
And we should also come back to your first request, which maybe you can articulate one more time.
Yeah. So for the city of Menlo Park, we did a short analysis of the different options within PCE and how that would affect progress towards our climate action goals in Menlo Park. So the city of Menlo Park adopted a 27% greenhouse gas reduction goal by 2020, and it's pretty ambitious. For us to meet that goal, we really require a very high level of clean power coming into the city at a base offering. Different cities have different climate goals for 2020, and I think the county has its own climate goal. And so it would be helpful to have that analysis. Maybe we could leave it to individual cities to do it, but at the overarching county level to know, okay, we know what the greenhouse gas reductions are associated with the 3 options from the feasibility study, and how does that impact progress towards the county's 2020 goals?
Yeah, I don't know what kind of data collection or analysis that requires. I mean, it's certainly something that motivates this whole initiative, and it will, by definition, make a big contribution to those reductions. But I guess you're saying is you want to kind of really get a better fine-tune or have better data about just how much of a contribution it makes, or.
We'll just do a comparison depending on a couple of different participation rate scenarios, right? Because we don't know if all 20 cities will join or at what level. And looking at a couple of different scenarios, how many tons of greenhouse gas reductions do you need to meet your 2020 goal? And what scenarios would make that feasible relative to all of the other measures that the county has planned?
Yeah, we should probably talk a little more offline.
So we can share the Menlo Park analysis with
that would be
staff
helpful.
Just as
one thought that
example.
enters my mind is, is that discussion better once we know what cities are participating, for example? I don't know. So, but that would be helpful if you sent us that. And Jim, we can kind of bring that to that. Okay. I lost track where we are.
We're at the end.
All right. And when it's a long day. We've covered next steps. That's you did that for Jim.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, these are the next steps.
Yep. So any additional comments?
January 4th. Got it.
You want the first prize ribbon? So it's going to be tough to beat after it. We had another question from the audience.
Bad time, Joe.
Thank you. It definitely is, but we need to hit this October launch date, because otherwise, you're we're well into 2017. So that's the goal. Okay, we will wrap it up for tonight. Shorter meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.